So welcome everybody. Thanks for joining. Welcome to our casual AMA event with Sonia Awan, the founder of Outbloom Publications, or I'm sorry,
Public relations.
Sorry. Oh man, it's been a long day. Has it been a long day for y'all? Outbloom Public Relations. And so how we do these AMA style events at the society, which is the Cybersecurity Marketing Society, for any of you who are unfamiliar, which is a group of a trade group for cybersecurity marketers, is we bring in an expert and we allow anyone to ask them questions. So specifically, Sonia has expertise in public relations for small and medium-sized cybersecurity companies who may be under-resourced or choose not to hire a PR firm on retainer, which a lot of our members are. And so basically this session is, I have a ton of questions for her, but if anyone else has questions, you can feel free to jump in the chat, raise your hand, scream out loud. Don't scream, but say like, hey, I have a question. And Sonia is here to answer it. So to start off, Sonia, can you just give all of us a download on you and Outlook?
Okay, so yeah, as you know, I'm Sonia, and then I've started working for a PR since I graduated from college, and somehow I fell into cybersecurity. I started the tech PR because all the agencies I was working for actually sort of like focused on tech, and then my big cybersecurity, I guess, opportunity came when I became the PR director for Panda Software. And then it was just sort of like I took some time off, had kids and all that. And then I started to go off on my own. And so far it's been going great. And I work with Michael, I work with Karen here, with little, smaller, big, mid-sized companies. And so far so good. So hopefully I'll be able to answer your questions. I'm not sure, how confident I am, but
we'll
oh, you're amazing. Don't even.
Yeah, so to give just a little more background to everyone in the room, like Sonia has gotten Karen a lot of publicity and a lot of press. We know that for sure in Dark Reading and other publications. And so like to start off, because we have such a big group here, who has a question? Who has a PR question does anyone want to start off with like a challenge or a question for Sonia?
I'll actually ask, because as I'm working with some other clients, what are some of the pitfalls you see for a lot of us who are trying to help clients or build our own business or accelerate the PR program without having necessarily the resources we'd like to have?
So I guess, to be honest, one of the biggest thing I see is that whole hesitation of actually adding PR to your campaign, like actual, because a lot of times people are thinking, oh, I'm doing marketing already, I have advertising costs, and I don't know if I actually have the time or resources for PR. But it's the understanding, because a lot of people don't even understand what PR actually is. And that's the truth, because even when I talk, even my parents still don't understand what I do. So basically one of the biggest thing is that actually having them understand that how PR can build reputation, build your trust in the community or you're in the industry, and you sort of like, branding. And then, the biggest thing is the awareness. But the second thing is that content. I feel like a lot of people have a lot of things to say, but they do not have a good, I would say, like a person who can respond quickly with the content that the media is looking for. So very important in any marketing PR group is to have a strong writer who can write and give me that content, so I can take it and have it, help the media who's looking for sort of like an expert opinion or thought leadership and all that. So
there's a pitfall on the internal side, is what you're saying. If there's
internal, yeah, and then the willingness to talk to people, to be able, a lot of people, I come across a lot of knowledgeable people, but they're just shy, they don't want to speak, or they don't want to express their opinions. And it's really, really important that, because you are representing your company, if it's a smaller company, it's all you. And you have to feel comfortable enough to just go out there and speak or express your views or what you think are right and wrong, and and then just make your presence known.
Hey, Sonia. So like, okay, so a lot of us at cybersecurity companies who are marketers at cybersecurity companies work, hopefully work with the technology resources at our companies. So, right. So like the developer or the IT person, and usually, at least, and you can argue with me, I feel like they're like, you know, like reporters are not looking for a marketing like person to ever answer anything.
No.
So like, how can you prep if you have some shy people on your team, how can you prep them or prepare them to be able to answer and respond to reporters' requests like cohesively and with a little less like incredible shyness?
Yes, of course. Like, yeah, definitely marketing. I mean, if you send from, I'm sorry, but it just happens. Like if they see the title marketer or something, they won't respond to you. But and then the knowledgeable person in the company is probably the IT director and all that. And they're really great, but maybe not people person. So what's important is to have media training, and which basically means that you just do this Q&A or sessions, mini sessions, where we tape them and videotape them, and we see, we give them potential questions that could, just what is it called, like things that have been recent events and all that, and make them get comfortable answering. And then that's another reason that why we need the writer, because a lot of times the reporters will send you the questions ahead of time. So if you have somebody who can, you can collaborate with, and then, you're writing and you're giving them the, what you need to tell versus what the writer has to do, and sort of like combine them together and just practice. Practice makes perfect. So you just, it's actually, very rarely that something breaks, an event breaks down or something happens where it's like, oh my God, something's going down, like the Experian, whatever the leak and all that. That's when, people have to speak, right, from the whatever, it's just right away.
Like right now.
But right now. But most of the time you have the time. They will send you, Karen knows, I send a lot of queries to Karen, and Michael knows, they send you these things, especially since I've been working with them for a while now. They will tell me, hey, Sonia, do you have anybody who can respond to this? And I will, go and send it to everybody, and whoever responds, the soonest obviously will probably have more chances, but it also depends on what they're writing, what their responses are. But it all takes, it's just the willingness, because what I come across is that people not, responding back. It's just a lack of response. And, and you lose credibility after a certain time. If I'm promoting you as a thought leader or an expert in your field, and you're not responding to any of the things that are being presented to you, you just, next time they won't even bother, even if you have the best answer. They won't even, acknowledge all that. So
yeah, because it's relationships, right?
It's relationship.
Like, and I don't have any relationships with reporters, but everyone in PR that I speak to is like, yeah, it's like you're building a relationship. You're almost like building your brand with a reporter before they start even like considering.
Exactly. I actually had something happening last month where I had scheduled a phone interview with a client, with somebody from what is it called? He was writing a story for dark reading, and my client didn't answer his phone. And then he said he was out to lunch, and even though he had a meeting, he knew he had the invite and all that. So that ruins my relationship with this, reporter. The next time he won't, he'll know that, okay, I don't provide solid sources.
Yeah, so you need to have that internal support, whatever PR structure that you create, I guess, with your company. Like, and we could talk next about like because it's so interesting, like for me, I have worked at places where we do typically always have a PR firm. It's like looking at that. Sorry, I went off on a random track there. But yeah, you need to have that internal support. You need to have someone who replies. Like at companies I've worked at, we have a global team of like SMEs. Like we'll have like a WhatsApp, and if you get something in on the WhatsApp, that means it's hot, and you got to look at it now if we want to reply to any sort of media opportunity. So there's more people in here now. Hi, everybody. So if you have a question specifically about PR or any question actually for Sonia, like feel free to just like raise your hand, unmute yourself and call out, put it in the chat, whatever you want. And until we get questions, I'm going to keep asking questions. So if you want to interrupt my long, train of words, come up with some questions and pitch them. Oh, Karen, you have a question. Okay, go ahead.
So I know that you've helped me a lot, but sometimes I'm still not always good at writing the quotes. It takes me a really long time. What do you find are quotes that, let me try that again. What are the suggestions for people looking to write quotes and responses to reporter questions? Like what makes it successful other than speed?
Okay, I know, but you've been really good about it. But what I have had problems with clients is that they kind of ignore what the questions were. Like they don't go, because a lot of times, they will have specific questions, and rather than just, passing on it, maybe you're not aware of it, or you don't feel confident enough to respond to it. They will just respond back with random, responses, answers. So it's really, really important that you read what are the questions are. Like, okay, what does this person really want to know? And then do a little bit of research. Even if you don't know exactly, it's all just do a little bit of research before responding back. So it's quality response, not just, you're sending something back to me. And because I'm not a very techie person, I don't know much, I just talk, and I just, bug people to, to feature my clients. But I rely on my clients to tell me exactly what I should be, conveying to the reporter. So it's really, really important that it's okay to pass on stuff, people do, but just don't like BS your way into like, oh yeah, and then again, I'm just wasting their time.
But what if I want to throw in a product pitch at the end of the quote?
Oh, you can't.
Okay.
Absolutely no product. Everything has to be product, vendor neutral, product neutral. The whole thing is that, with PR, what do you get? You get third party validation, right? Because basically when you're advertising, you're trying to build your own reputation and you're like promoting yourself. But with PR, is you wait for somebody else to tell others that, hey, this is a great, product, or this is a great service. And it's up to them if they want to promote you or not. But the moment they see anything promotional, they take it off. They don't want to.
So we have questions in the chat that were submitted anonymously. So 3 questions. How are you finding your connections at media outlets? How can you start a relationship with journalists? And how do you maintain relationships? Like some good general like PR questions, like how do you build these relationships with reporters?
Okay, so first of all, we all have agencies and all, we have access to, we subscribe to media databases like Station and all that. So suppose if I sign in with a new client, okay, my recent example is that I'm actually deviated a little bit, because things are kind of crazy right now. So I have taken on a client who they do UV light technology. So what's happening is that since I don't have relationship with these reporters, first of all, I build my list and I see who I go do a lot of research, not just in this session, but I want to see who all are writing about UV tech for COVID, for COVID, killing the virus. And then I introduce myself. I always send a nice introduction. I said, hey, I know blah, blah, blah. How are you doing? And, would you be interested if I discuss my new client with you? And most of the time, these people are really, really nice. They're like, okay, yeah, right now. Okay, sure. But then a lot of times they're like, oh, not right now. And then I follow up. And sometimes, I don't like calling as much, but when I have something really, really important and it's, newsworthy and, time sensitive, I do make the calls. And, you have to have a very thick skin, it's just, a lot of times they hang up on you, but yeah. So calling and then making sure they get quality content. Like, even if they're not looking. So as a PR person, what do I do? What are these pitches? Pitches are not just things that I'm looking up, I basically, what happens is that I create my own pitches where I feel like, okay, this is a really important newsworthy topic and I can tie in my client into it. And I'm going to send these pitches hoping that even if a reporter, he or she wasn't thinking about this topic, it can, generate interest. So then they will be like, hey, I didn't think of it like this way. Okay, yeah, sure. We'll do it. So that's how it goes. So again, constantly keeping them on the loop, like, hey, this is happening, this is breaking, or this is updating, and do you want to know more? And that's how I maintain my relationships.
How many emails do you send a day, Sonia?
Like
a billion?
A lot. Sometimes when I actually when I have to sort of like issue a press release for a client, I mean, because over the wires, okay, it's just random, but I have to target particular thing and I have to send it individually. So a lot of times it could be like 1,000 even. Like I'm just sitting there, sending, and I have to personalize it too. So I don't want them to feel that, oh, I just sent a huge, massive chain or whatever thing. So yeah, so it's a lot of emails, a lot of follow-ups, and that's why I have to get up really, really early and making sure that everybody's in a good mood.
Okay, so for new, because we have more new people here, if you have a question, raise your hand, unmute yourself and be like, hey, I have a question, or drop it in the chat and we'll get to it. So I have a question about the community building, which is actually, we had an event about this yesterday, and you and I had a chat about this earlier, about how sometimes cybersecurity companies neglect local community in your PR and your media efforts. So can you talk more about what you've seen and how, in terms of building relationships between community and company, in the PR space? I thought it was really interesting what you said before. So
it's so funny because I don't, maybe I was having a really bright moment that time, but no, basically, a lot of times, yes, they do not focus on community. Community development is huge. And you might think that, okay, I'm just an LA-based, even though I'm an LA-based cybersecurity company, but my product is international or national level. But what is important to know is that when you are reaching out to local media and all that, they don't really particularly want to know what exactly you're doing or your product is. It's just they want to know if you're making a difference in your community, and that will, in turn, if you do something good, that will in turn generate coverage you want. And any coverage is good coverage, right? So even if you get featured on a local, affiliate, whatever, a news thing that giving out, a toy drive for your company, this will then be, you can blast it on your social media and all this thing. And this is building a reputation that, okay, this company is not only doing this, but they're also helping the community. So it's really, really important to come up with ideas that you can, especially, in if you think of all these events you do as PR marketing people and all that, and you have whole lot of giveaways and all that. If you can tie in some of the giveaways with your local radio stations or newspaper and, give it, something fun, obviously, but again, make it newsworthy where it's like me as a PR person can reach out to my local newspaper and say that, hey, we're doing this fun, bike giveaway from this, or monitors that we have extra monitors for the local school. Do you want to come and cover this story? And, that's just, again, brand awareness, reputation, your trust within your company, all kinds of stuff builds on that.
And it was so interesting because you mentioned that when we were talking, you were mentioning that it's again, a lot of us don't have a local, we're not all MSPs here, or MSSPs with regional local focus. A lot of us are product companies. I see product companies here, and it's it honestly never occurred to me to do something like that in our local area, or and to publicize it. But it seems to the point of the question asker before, a way to also build a relationship with reporters.
Yeah.
And I think that, reporters get different jobs at different places too. So if you're thinking long term, if you build a relationship with someone, they may move on to another city, another bigger publication,
and they remember you.
And they'll remember you. So long term.
Yeah.
Definitely. Again, it was just really interesting to me as someone who thinks, okay, my hit list is dark reading, help net, the Wall Street Journal. So
also, I tell my clients, sometimes you have to go get the low hanging fruits to move up to the top of the, food chain, right? It's just like, it's okay. So if you want to be featured in dark reading, then when I talk to the editor, they're like, oh, what have they been doing so far? So if I don't have anything to show, even if it's just if you have something printed in a blog, that's also something that gives you credibility. No, this is something for me to show that he's a great writer, or she's a great writer, and they're trying to do this. Or they know, obviously we're always promoting the spokesperson of the company, and they know what they're talking about, and they've been writing about it, and they have established their expertise.
So we have a comment from Karen. Also, still gets into search engines. Local news will look for people around local stories, i.e. Hartford Courant reports on Hartford school data breach. Okay, really relevant. I got
Karen on that, remember?
Yeah, so still, yes. It says,
yeah,
she says
and it was great because I got to say, well, I'm a local parent in West Hartford next door, and I worry about this all the time. And so that's the other thing when you're thinking about local. Mm-hmm. You still get your name in the search in that article. And if you're doing, I know a lot of, all of us in marketing will do things like Google alerts. I came up in a Google alert as local cybersecurity expert.
Yeah.
So really and then that just kind of builds like out the name online.
And I just remember when I pitched you, when I mentioned that you are an actual parent from the school district, they got very excited. They're like, oh, wow, so that sets you apart from the rest of the people who are being pitched. So yeah, and then again, then it comes down to the back, a lot of times, most of the time we hope that they add the backlinks, so that it comes back to you and people are seeing what you're talking about or what your company is about and all that. So it's a chain reaction, right? It's like, one thing leads to another. So
and we did really have one of those, which is another good point, is one of the pieces, the reporter put a backlink, which at the time was wrong, but they fixed to my website. So it did a good job of getting, the domain authority backlink there too.
Love backlinks, always. Sometimes in past places I've had to remind the PR firm, like, we're trying to get backlinks here too, on top of like press, but like, can you also make sure they include our website, please? And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Go ahead.
Yeah, they don't. I'm sorry. A lot of times, reporters are pretty cool about it, but I've come across many who do not want to provide that. In their minds, they're somehow promoting your company. So so it just takes a lot of like pleading, like, oh, can you please? And then they tell you like, sorry, I'm not going to do it. But a lot of times that's when I reach out to the editor or the editor-in-chief. I'm like, oh, I pretend that I haven't spoken to the reporter at all about this. And then, there's a ways around it.
Oh, giving us your secrets, Sonia. Okay, so just another, because we actually have more people on now. So just another like quick thing. If you have a question, if you have a specific PR thing you want to talk about, bring it up. Like, Sonia is here to help and advise and answer questions. And unless you all love the sound of my voice, which is totally cool too, I'm going to keep going.
I'm going to ask another question because I was thinking about it. So if somebody's trying to start some of this on their own, how much time, either per week or per day, should we focus on doing this outreach as we build these relationships? And how long does it take to build a relationship?
So basically, if you're gonna do it on your own, a lot of time has to be dedicated to the research. Basically, you have to figure out who you want to target, who your audience is, who the reporters are, and they're extremely, sneaky about their contact info. So you have to do a lot of, going, because I'm pretty sure that if you're going to do it on your own, you're not going to invest on a media database and all that. So, so once you have that, you build a relationship. It depends. It anywhere from, because sometimes they respond to you, but it all depends on your speed, like how fast you do your research and what do you think, what your message is, right? The PR is all about messaging. Like, you have to find the right message so that it gets to the right people, where the right people get interested. So, develop your message and all that, and just outreach. I would say, like, I always tell my clients that it takes at the first 3 months to build you as, as a whole, as a company, as everything, the media friendly, to promote you. So it doesn't happen right away. I don't sign on I wouldn't sign on a client and say the next week you'll be on, CNN. It doesn't work that way. But if you're lucky, sometimes it does, But usually I would say that it takes at least 3 months just to have a solid build of your, the campaign you're pursuing.
And one follow-up to that, please. Sorry, Gianna. Let me try this again. When you're emailing them sort of that first cold email, what would be the percentage of time that they respond to you? Like, would you say it's like 20%, 70%?
I would say initially, so one a trick you have to do is just keep in mind is that don't expect anything in return right away when you first reach out. So you have to do at least 3 different follow-ups. So, and with that follow-up, I would say that there's a 40 to 50% chance that you will get, unless, again, it depends on your messaging. If it's really, really awesome that you think that, okay, I have this and I think it's a huge thing that your audience need to know about it. You always have to drill it in that, you might not be thinking about it, but your audience, your viewers, your readers, they all need to find out. I really strongly do it with conviction that, okay, I really, really believe that this is something. So that's how you sort of like, you have to keep on prodding. You have to be like, but don't get irritating, but just, just make sure that, hey, be really, really super nice. Be like, hey, I know I'm taking up your time. I know you have millions of other things to do, but, can you please, what do you think? Just a yes or no answer. That'll be, are you interested? Like I always say that if you want me to not call you, please let me know. So, it's always being polite, goes a long way.
The role of the public. Oh, go ahead, Karen.
I was going to say, how do you keep yourself from crying every time they hit you?
In the beginning, I remember like when I started like when I right out of college and all this thing, my first PR job, I used to, because they make all of us, the entry level, whatever, low level people go and make these cold calls. And sometimes they were so, hurtful, but you would cry and then you get over it and you know that you're just doing your job and they understand it.
Oh my gosh. So I wanted to just point out so for all of us hearing Sonia, like it sounds like being a publicist, or at least entry level, is a lot like being an SDR. So like all of us
definitely.
SDRs, know that. And man, that sounds like a grind.
I got threatened so many times, even in recent years. Like, I guess I reached out to somebody who, even via email, and they were not in the mood or whatever. Everybody has their own issues. And they threatened me to report me to other reporters so that they don't respond to me and, write about me what a horrible nagging person I am, but you get over it. And then, then it happens that I was working with another client that reporter was actually wanting to cover, and, he was nice to me again. So.
Oh, wow.
You work with a lot of personalities, and
that's like really interesting.
They get on their high horses, and you just have to stay calm and just take it all in as long as you get the work done,
Yeah, not be a hothead, I guess.
Yeah.
So, okay, so here's another thing I always, this is like the perennial cybersecurity PR question, which is how to be different in your public relations stuff, or like, not in your public relations stuff. You guys, I had like a really long week and it's not over yet. So like, how do you stand out when you're reaching out? Like, how do you, because like, the media, like the alert goes out, like we need someone on this, like, how are you positioning clients, or how do you position yourself as something that's more interesting? How in your proactive pitching or proactive outreach are you saying something that's like interesting to actual reporters and not just like, oh, another one of these?
Yeah, I guess you have to be creative. Don't just, do like a bland pitch, like, hey, I work for this client, they're a great company, they're a great product, do you want to talk about them? No, I always find a way of finding a story. And that's why it's very, very important that first of all, you have to determine who your company, who the spokesperson would be, and if they have a nice story. And so I always tell stories in my pitching. A lot of times I'm like, hey, do you know, I came across this person and they went through this, blah, blah, blah. And this is how they fell into cybersecurity. They used to be this hacker and blah, blah, all kinds of fun things. So just make it interesting so that they read the email and they're not bored, just, and have a sense of humor. And I start by saying that, oh yeah, it's me again. I know you're going to be upset, but just hear me out for a second, So it's just a lot of creative pitching, and always tie in what's happening in the news cycle, even if it's something small, even if it's like, how we found out recently, right? Like a few months ago, that how hackers are actually bypassing the multi-factor authentication system and all this stuff. So find something, a story that is relatable, and just say that, hey, and that's where the whole, I don't know if you're aware of this term called newsjacking, or rapid responses. So basically, that's a huge PR tool that we have, where it's like we look and we see what's happening, what's breaking in terms of news. And for cybersecurity, obviously, we look into things like what is it, the security info, all these blogs and all that, and see what's happening right now today, what broke, and then you take it and you write a pitch around it, where you say that you ask actually your spokesperson to comment on this issue, like bleeping computer just issued this warning, and have your spokesperson just say a few words, comment, so that I can blast it to all the other cybersecurity editors and reporters. And even if they were not thinking about covering it, or they didn't see it at a different, and if the pitch had an angle that they didn't think of, that right away it becomes, again, like coming back to Karen, I send her a lot of stuff. It's not actual queries. It's like, hey, this is happening. Do you want to talk about it? And then, she gets quoted.
That's awesome. So we have a bunch of questions in the chat currently. So let's just jump over there. And again, if you guys also want to ask questions out loud, feel free to do whatever, go like this and make me make us notice. So here's something from Brian. So my experience has been that when I submit something to a news or to a press, they will most often send me to their sales team. They want us to pay to host an article on their site instead of getting organic press. Do you experience this? If so, how do you respond, Sonia?
I actually very rarely do. And then I just ignore that because when they see, basically what happens is that it really depends where the email is coming from. So if you have, in your email, your title being a marketer, they automatically put you there. They don't even want to read, okay, it could be extremely important and all that, and a really great thought leadership piece. So it's always, always, always good to have it coming from someone else if it's marketing is your title. And I'm sorry, it just happens that way, that they have this thing, their journalists have this thing against marketers. They just feel like somehow, and we're in the middle. That's why they want a PR person, because in a previous job, the marketing person actually tried to do the pitching and all this stuff, and they realized that she wasn't getting anything. They want to work with somebody who's in the middle person. So that's how people like me, we come in okay, yeah, we're not going to try to sell you something. We're not going to try to promote anything. We're just bringing you the content and see if you like it. But most of the time, if they send it to you, if you can have your article published, I wouldn't pay for it, basically. That's the whole idea of doing PR, that you don't pay a dime.
So we have another question in the chat. We have a bunch. Okay, this is from Anonymous. Okay, so I'm in-house in marketing and coming from a PR agency background, but my company has been burned by prior PR agencies. How can I convince my execs to make the investment for a monthly retainer with an agency in order to scale our PR efforts? We have a freelancer, but it's not scalable fast enough. So this is a little outside of your scope, Sonia, being someone who does part-time and not agency work for
Yeah.
companies.
I mean,
so this is
yeah, I've come out of that whole agency scenario. And so basically, you know, it's just, again, you have to show a lot of value. You have to see, the biggest thing I would say is that show how your competitors are doing and then see what's out there, what's being written about them and all that, who's covering them. And you know that if you want to have that same level of media coverage or prominence in the news and all that, you need to invest, whether it's a consultant or an agency. But it's very, very important. Again, I just say that it's all about third party validation, that you need it from others for your company to have the reputation that it desires.
Yeah, because like, so for example, again, PR, like KPIs, right, are like pretty, like tracking PR back to revenue. You can do that via like referral, like seeing where
the domain authority,
and like who hit your website from, like, okay, we got a new lead and they came in from the Wall Street Journal. I've never been in the Wall Street Journal. I just like to say it. If you say it out loud, it'll happen. From the Wall Street Journal. And I can tell because they saw our article, so you could do ROI stuff there. But just generally, and I think because there's been a shift in marketing, a lot of marketing from, like, at least recently, I've seen, just me, I don't know if this is the gospel, but, a lot more focus on brand recently. I don't know if everyone else has seen some of that. How can you, it's hard to get those trackable things. You can't say, unless you really have something direct, you can't be like, oh yeah, and the prospect saw us written out about in dark reading like 6 times over the past 2 years, so they got familiar with our brand. So it's very hard. What's your opinion on metrics for PR, Sonia?
Yeah, it's kind of difficult. I mean, it's PR is not really quantifiable. Like, it's hard to quantify PR, but again, it all goes back to having really, really good quality media mentions. Like, you would know by getting something in dark reading how many subscriptions are there, right? How many people are actually reading it. And also, it's very important. Like, a lot of times we think of, like, Wall Street Journal or LA Times and all that, but trade publications are very, very important, because these are the ones that CEOs and CTOs and all are reading, and you would need to be on it. So that a lot of times you're thinking that, whatever, I don't care about this, I just want the big national ones. National ones can get buried under a lot of other stuff, right, Buzz? But when you are going into a niche market, it's you're more likely to get the kind of ROI you're expecting. So
I have one more question before we jump to more questions in the chat. What is tier 1 media to you? What's tier 1 coverage?
Tier 1
for a cybersecurity company.
Cybersecurity obviously would be, dark reading, CSO, HelpNet. They're like top 10, things that you want, even if you don't get interviewed by them, or because a lot of times they don't do much of because it's freelance journalists who are, submitting their, or, working for different media outlets. It's very, very important that you get thought leadership pieces like byline articles. There's a huge, because news is always evolving, it's changing, and what you have to offer probably not so desirable in terms of news cycle, what's happening in the media right now. But while you wait for people to come and interview you, it's really, really important how you need to write something that sort of features your expertise, that that you're knowledgeable and you want to share that knowledge. And that's where the thought, and this is why it's really, really important to establish your spokesperson as the thought leader in your industry.
What if your spokesperson leaves and you put all this work into them and they like get up and leave? Has that, I know, sorry, that's like totally, that like happens.
That happens.
I see heads nodding. Has this like, I made you an influencer and you leave me? Like
Karen knows with Diana, right? Di left. So I was working with Di, and suddenly she left. So, and then I had all these other people who I had scheduled her with, but I couldn't even, I had to, because she started working for another company. So if I promote her still, that company would be getting the coverage. So it's, then you just go back to ground, just start all over again, train and all that. But a lot of times what's happening is that people actually love being quoted and they love being talked about. So I think once you have your spokesperson really, has their position solidified, they're not going to leave too much because they love that attention. Like I was talking to you about Beyond Security, my the CEO of there, I've been working with him for like close to 4 years now, and he just loves it. He just loves, even if he gets one interview a month, he's like, I just wait for this. I have so much fun. And he doesn't like the written ones. He likes actual broadcasts or podcasts and all that. So, and then he's like, oh, can you get me on again? And I'm like, you've had your, chance, and now you have to wait and let others come in. So yeah.
Okay,
People
awesome.
tried it, yeah.
So here's a comment from Hector. Another thing I think works a lot. So this is related back to the getting pushback on, getting routed to the paid route for articles. So another thing I think works a lot is having your SMEs submit articles on generic topics to media outlets as contributors. What do you think, Sonia, about that?
That's more for marketing.
Uh-huh.
So okay. I'm not a huge supporter, because and then Michael, another person I work with, he'll know that I always tell him that don't put on stuff before you show it to me, because when I'm submitting an article, it has to be original. It doesn't matter, even if you put it on your blog and everything, they will not accept it. And I get chewed out. And they go onto your website, the client I'm submitting, and they go and check their blogs and they check everything, and they come and tell me like, hey, I've seen exact same thing on your thing. Why are you wasting my time? So
we had to do that at a company I was at. It was like, we found this really interesting, hack or attack. And it was like, oh, marketing was like, oh my God, we're going to write about this. We're going to do a blog. We're going to turn it into content. We're going to parcel that content into little pieces of content and spread it across all of our channels, right? You take a big piece of content and you make it small and have a lot of runway. And it was like the PR firm was like, no. Don't. You can wait 1 week until we bring this to reporters and we'll hear back. And so that was fun. But it worked. We're in the news. It was awesome.
It did.
Okay, here's a question.
Time.
Yeah. So also reminder everybody, because we only have like 15 minutes or so left. If you have questions, burning questions, put them in the chat, raise your hand, scream out loud, do whatever, and we'll get to them. So do you have advice on what to look for when you're hiring a PR consultant?
Yeah, sure. I mean, you look for somebody like me. I'm just joking. No, you have to look for somebody who you have to have them show show their portfolios to see what they have done, because it's easy to just say that, oh yeah, I can just, because a lot of times people don't realize that PR is a lot more than just press releases and all that, right? It's just having, that this person has established himself or herself in this industry, in the cybersecurity arena, whatever you're looking into. So make sure that they know what they're talking about, have them, show you some samples of the work, the placements and the media they've worked with, and kind of, and then, it's always good to have somebody who can give you an idea but keep your expectations realistic, because this is what I've come across a lot of times, and even recently, it's just people don't understand that, like everything else, PR takes a little bit of extra time, because it's like having a baby, right? You're just, you wait, and it's going to start talking. Eventually, it's going to start doing all that. But it takes a little bit of time. So it takes a little bit of time to establish the groundwork, and then, introduction and all that. And then, getting the spokesperson ready, media friendly, that's really, really important. Getting the writer. I cannot stress enough how important it is for people to have that writer in your team. There has to be somebody, like Karen is an excellent writer. So just have all that, and then, see how you get along. And there should be a nice connection, because the PR person is the person you're going to talk to a lot. And whether it's like, you're not just doing just media relations, you're doing crisis communication too. If something, you have a bad publicity, who do you go to, right? Who has to fix it? It's the PR person who has to go back and forth and do all the, because if you have a product, and product reviews are a big part of PR, right? And then this review comes out, and that's it, there goes your reputation. So who's the person who has to go and fight for you? It's your PR person. So it's like, oh, give us another chance and let's do it right. And can you just retract and all that? So yeah, just make sure that you get along with that person.
Like an SC media review is what you're saying? Like
Yeah,
SC
yeah.
awards or
Like,
SC media
solution
or...
reviews and all that, product reviews. And it happened where it's like, okay, they have had bad, if you sort of like somebody wrote something about you or company that's like, oh, I've had bad service, or this CEO doesn't know what they're talking about, right? So all that, all that cleanup has to be done by a PR person. And when it has to do with the media, they're the only people who can, reach them and talk to them and explain, because, that's how it goes. So have a good communication with the person you're going to be working with. It's open, open communication.
Another question, this is from Rahul. What or when is a good litmus test for a services/advisory firm to jump into the PR bandwagon? So when do you know that you're going to start needing like a PR person, a PR firm? Like, what is the litmus? What do you see?
I would say right off the bat, like as soon as you feel like you have a message to share, or an announcement or a product or something that you just feel like, okay, I have this, we're settled, and now we want the world to know, that's when you jump in. You just find a reputable person or a company and just get it out there. It should be at the same time you're doing your marketing push. So
sorry, just to jump in quickly. Like it's so some CEOs and so like if you're early stage and you're working on like everything that you do is like quantified with like, tied back to revenue, like MQLs, leads, like all of that. It's like, in my experience, like PR is still important. Brand awareness is still important, and cannot be forgotten. And that's not an ad for Sonia or for anyone, but it is important. And okay, here's another one. What are some good initial engagement models that a company can look at before engaging into a full-on retainer model with a PR firm?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that again?
Yeah, sorry. That was a bit of word salad. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm not going to say that it's been a long week yet again. Oops, I did. Okay, so what are some good initial engagement models that a company can look at before engaging in a full-on PR retainer? So like, how do you test out the PR waters, I think? Like, what are some small scale things you can do with like, to test out PR before just hiring someone for 20 grand a month?
Yeah, so I would say that if you start with all companies, and I think we were talking about it before we started this, that it's good to have, because I do not believe that unless you're a huge, Fortune 500, whatever company, and you have a ton of things going on, you don't need like a huge, PR budget or a, agency retainer right off the bat. Just try out with, small like press releases and little thought leadership pieces and all that, and see what kind of interest in the media you have generated with your service or your product. And if you feel that, okay, there's lots going on and, you want to target tap into all the awards, all the event, sponsorship and all kinds of like speaking opportunities. And you just think that, okay, I'm going to invest in all that because this is going to have a huge return. That's when I think that you can go into something bigger. But initially, do some announcements with press releases and see, if you get any interest back, like they want to know more about you or not, because that way you can sort of like, tread the water and see how far you want to take it. Do you want to just do it for 6 months? Give yourself 6 months and see where it goes. And from there on, you can do big scale. So, but I always think that when you are starting any PR campaign for anything, it doesn't matter if it's a single person trying to do it or a huge company trying to do it, agency, the results will be the same. Initially, the first 3 to 6 months, you're not going to be huge unless they become big like Google or something. That's when you're like, okay, we need a ton more people working on this. And we have, so yeah, I think even with a part-time something, because part-time PR, you're still going to be good. But do not sign into a huge, retainer before you know that if you're going to be able to invest your time and you'll be able to give a lot of content, because you can have, the agency can be there or the consultant can be there, but if you don't provide us with the info you want to be pushed out, our hands are tied. There's so much, fluff we can make up. We just need,
So that's really interesting. So like in terms of like content, like from that you should have to provide to either a consultant, or if you're doing it internally, doing it yourself for pitches, like what is like the sort of like, I need to have like 7 pieces of news a week. Like what is sort of like cadence are you looking for, Sonia, for new content and new information and new stories? Because that I think will show internally like, okay, I do have the resources or I do not.
Yeah. So first of all, again, I would say that, focus on thought leadership things, like in terms, just look at what's going on, who your industry is writing about, who your competitors are writing about, and see if you have anything different to say. And secondly, it's always good to have company generated news, like even if it's a update or a personnel change or something, a new office, it's always good to, have those news going and being sent out so that you're still relevant in the media. They're not forgetting, because in between there are times there's a slump and there's not much going on. Try to create news from within the company and see, like, feature something that's, amazing. This employee did this amazing thing, and do you want to, hear about it, or just write a press release about a newest update you had on your product. Things like that, just keep the news cycle going. Just keep, while you're waiting for the big ones.
Yeah, it's like a brand thing, like getting your name in front of, like I've had PR firms tell me, like, you have to like submit like X number of times before they even like think about
write
you,
those
honestly.
bylines.
And that's why we're keep like sending you these, even though we haven't had success so far. So really fast, because we have one more question at least, and I want to ask about awards, because I hate awards so much. I don't know if anyone else hates awards. I freaking hate awards so much. They cost $800 and you never get them, and like nobody knows if you even have a chance. So tell me, Sonia, what is your thoughts on awards? Like, when is it worth it to submit an award? Like, is it worth it? Should you budget? Should you have like $1,000 a year and that's it? What do you think?
Okay, so the way I look at it is that I'm not a huge fan of awards either, because something you have to pay for, it doesn't make really that much of a sense. And it's the same way with, those, you get these emails from these, magazines that we're going to feature your profile, right? Like, but you have to pay $2,500. But it only makes sense when you feel that you need to show it to clients, potential clients, or all that, like sort of raise yourself up that, hey, we're the award-winning company doing this. It makes sense. So it's good, but if you're a small business and if you don't have it in your budget or the time or the personnel, I don't think it's a huge thing to do right off the bat. But if you feel like there's not much going on in terms of your company being generating news, or you just feel like, okay, we need to feel motivated or something, I think that, I would say that it's always good to have these things, opportunities come towards you versus you, searching them out. So if something you've written, or, that's why reviews are so important. If you get like solutions review, or, they have computer week and all kinds of, they have their product reviews or things like that. Those are, I would say, because they don't cost you money, it needs the person. You have to have the right engineer talking to the review editor. And if you get a good one, that's 100 times more than spending $1,000 on an award that you might or might not get.
Absolutely. Thank you for telling me that. I'm going to, so Karen, I know you have your hand up.
I'm sorry.
Can you go really fast? Sorry, not to say, can you go really fast? That's so rude.
Let somebody else go. It was just a piggyback off your question.
You want to piggyback fast while I find the next question?
So in general, how have you seen like awards be treated? Are they the ones that people pay for? Like, are there awards that we don't pay for versus ones that are given more credibility in the industry?
It does. And again, it's not, from a PR standpoint, it really doesn't make, the media is not going to look at it, but like, oh, hey, they got these awards. It's very rarely. It's usually for, business purposes, for salespeople to go and say that, hey, this is what's happening. So it's a good thing to have, but it's not the only thing. Only thing I would say that the most important thing would be establish yourself as a thought leader where you're the experts who are being called on. Like after a certain, if you like Karen, right now we've been working together for a few months, and now, people do ask me, can Karen respond to this? That means they've already known, okay, she's this person who knows what she's talking about. And see, yeah.
That's awesome. So here's a question from Hannah. With the breach that happened at FireEye, this is topical. This is a good question. I'm curious to know your perspective of how the PR for this situation was handled and any recommendations you have to build trust before a breach and after.
Yeah, so this is like a huge, everybody's talking about how, it's some foreign hackers got into it and all that. So they obviously should, have a contingency plan. So are you talking in terms of FireEye, what they should be doing, or?
Yeah, I guess specifically wanting to know like how your perspective on how this situation was handled, and if you felt like it was like a good way it was handled within their PR department, and then things that companies can be doing kind of before something like this would happen, and then what they should be doing to build that trust, especially if you're a security organization, after something like that happens.
Yeah. So it's being transparent, right? They came out and they said, yes, this happened and all that. That's really, really important. Don't try to hide it. And, things happen, and basically go out there and discuss what exactly happened and how did it happen, who was at fault and what did they ignore and all that. Be very, very clear and concise about the contingency plans you have had in place. So what was the damage like and all that, right? So being open and upfront about it and be ready to talk about it. So always, again, whether it's a big company or small, you should have to have that, contingency plan. Like if anything happens, that's where the crisis communication comes in. Like, okay, so what will happen? So you'll have this, I would say that always have statement prepared, so that you're not like scrambling and you're not just, because it's hard to have a cool head when you're going through something like this. So have that prepared, say what you have to say, and do what you have to do in terms of calming your, clients and all that. Have all kinds of, so yeah, and then then follow up with the steps you're taking after the event has occurred. So it's like, it's being very, very communicative and just putting everything out there so that people are not wondering, they're not trying to figure out what exactly is going on. You be proactively send out the information.
I think that, I'm not a PR professional, and I would never want to be a PR professional ever. Sorry, no offense to you, Sonia. Yeah, sounds like it's kind of hard.
Karen, same thing too.
But what I've seen on, in reading on the breach and like how they responded, like exactly what you said, Sonia, is like they're very transparent. They announced it pretty quickly. They didn't do the whole like wait 2 years and announce it like we see with some of the big financial companies. And you're like, oh, like all of my data, all my social has been out for like 3 years and you never told me. Thanks. Right. So they did that. And then they also released all their tools, the red team tools that were, I think, hacked. I don't remember exactly specifics. So they actually released it via GitHub. Like, so that was like, to me, like really super proactive and definitely, sorry, I'm laughing at what Karen just said. You have to be a really confident person to be a PR professional. Like from me as like someone in the industry, but like kind of a bystander, I don't work at FireEye, I never have. It seems like they did the right thing.
They did. And also have the person like, keep yourself available to all questions. So there would be a lot of questions, follow-ups, right? So either the spokesperson or whoever is the most knowledgeable, who can handle the situation, make sure their schedule is sort of like open where they can take these calls and take this, queries and just respond.
That's a great point, that if something happens, you're going to have to clear your schedule to reply to all the things that have happened. So we have 1 minute left. I want to thank everyone for attending this AMA. Thank you, Sonia. How do people find you if they have other follow-up questions?
Just email me or Slack me on this channel. I'm there, and then, and I'll be happy to, answer all your questions. I know there's, I probably didn't touch on many of the topics, but please feel free to call, email me or message me on Slack, and I'll be happy to help.
And what's your email?
Thank you so much. My email is Sonia, Sonia, AWAN, N as in Nancy, PR@gmail.com.
Yeah, so this has been recorded and it'll be available soon. And also one last comment by Eliza, and there's a whole bunch of internal stuff that FireEye would have to do as well, making sure employees who aren't spokespeople don't go like on camera with like their eyes wide open, like, you know, that's a good.
Yeah, it's exciting. I mean, it's tempting, you know, to go and talk about things like, but yeah, you have to control all that.
So thanks so much. We are the Cybersecurity Marketing Society. Thanks everybody for attending. If you have ideas or want to see an expert or have another AMA, like let us know who or what your problems are in cybersecurity marketing, and we will arrange to bring someone in and speak to the group. So we're here for you, and visit us at cybersecuritymarketingsociety.com. And I know a lot of your names, so I'll see you guys around.
Thank you guys. Thanks. Bye. Nice meeting you all.